For Virgin Atlantic, 2020 was a story of vastly reduced flying, some huge losses beyond our wildest dreams, financial restructuring to preserve liquidity, and operational restructuring that reduced our workforce massively in order to meet what has become the new market norm. Our passenger numbers and our revenue fell by 80% in 2020, and if you think the first couple of months we were still flying normally, that's massive. We carried 1.2 million passengers in 2020. The year before we'd done 6 million, so again some idea of the magnitude. Our passenger revenue was under £500 million, whereas normally we would have done 2 billion for that period. There are really only two bright spots for us. One was our cargo business, which we managed to grow by 50% over that period. And the second was our amazing people and the incredible resilience, determination and passion that they collectively showed to keep us in business. So what we're going to do, and of those people, at its peak, we had 80% of our workforce on furlough, so a massively reduced number. We also lost over half of our people through redundancy, so massive sort of structural change. And a lot of those in office-based roles, as I know has been true for many of you, and those teams are working from home as the norm as well. So today what we want to do is share how we've tried to provide reassurance to our people to both return to work and stay energised and engaged in our mission, and also talk to you about some of the ways of working principles that we've come up with to really guide how we're going to work in the future and set us up both to thrive but also to fulfil our ambition to be the most loved travel company. So my name is Darryl. I head up the property and facilities team at Virgin Atlantic, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Abbie, who heads up our people journeys and learning team. This is particularly kind of important for me because actually Abbie and I have worked together really closely on this over the course of the last year, and I think one of the real strengths of this has been bringing together both the property and the people side of things together into one programme of work. So it's great to have the opportunity to come and talk to you together. In terms of things that we would like to cover, so just a little bit more context to what happened to our industry, but also what was happening to our people and the kind of environment we were working in. Then we'll take you through a little bit about our approach and how we've looked at our people experience and how we looked at the challenges in front of us. Then we'll take a look at how we went about reassuring our people, both about the longevity of our business, but also about persuading them to come back into work and work regularly. We'll then have a look at how we've embedded new ways of working, and then lastly, how we're kind of now building on those lessons and kind of looking to what next. We'll be really pleased to take questions if I kind of focus them at the end, but please kind of store them up. We'd love to have a conversation as best we can. All good so far? Yep. Excellent. Good. So, a tough 18 months in aviation, and I think for the travel industry, and I know lots of other industries as well. Government rules, both in the UK and across the globe, have severely restricted where passengers could fly, and what we could do, and we went through a mass cancellation of services and a massive backlog of refunds that we had to do, like most airlines had to do. So whilst strong cargo performance definitely helped us and gave us some much needed revenue, we've had to adapt our business really, really rapidly and be very agile. So many of our competitors have reached out to their shareholders and governments for additional support. Others didn't survive the fight and are no longer with us. And for us at Virgin Atlantic, we went through a £1.2 billion solvent recapitalisation process to really set ourselves up and make sure we could weather the storm. Some of the things that we had to do as part of that process, we completely reviewed our network and schedule, so where we're flying to and how frequently. We closed our base at Gatwick, albeit we hope to go back someday soon. We retired our 747 fleet and also our Airbus A340 fleet prematurely as well. We removed over 35% of our real estate within the space of 6 months, and we renegotiated terms and conditions with a lot of our different work groups. So this, for our people, was a period of extreme change. And I guess when we think about our people, I know a lot has been said today around those that are office-based. For us, we're obviously an airline, so we've got a lot of people flying. We've got those working in engineering, we've got those working in the terminal, so it's not always possible to work from home or work remotely. But I think we kind of categorised our people into 5 groups. We've got those that sadly left the business and that we still cared for and want to make sure we do right by them. those that were on extended periods of furlough and then coming back into the business, those that were operating our aircraft, so actually still having to come in each day to maintain our aircraft and also serve our customers on board and in the terminals. Those that were previously office-based that now found themselves working from home regularly, and those that still needed to come into the office because the nature of the facilities that they required wouldn't allow them to do their work at home. So a big challenge for all. So just to talk about some of those people challenges a little bit more, because I think it really is quite important for the context of what we were working through. So working from home became the norm for many. Digital meetings, of course, routine. I think "you're on mute," probably one of the most captured phrases, as I'm sure is true for lots of you as well. For our crew, we often found that they would fly a sector, but then either had to return straight back, they weren't allowed to leave the aircraft, so doing some extremely long shifts, or if they were allowed to leave the aircraft, they had to remain within their hotel rooms and weren't allowed out again until the flight back home happened. As we've seen from other talks today, lots of juggling kind of homeschooling, caring for others and loved ones. Many had lots of anxiety about returning to work after long periods of furlough, and others still remain anxious today about returning to the workplace at all, and that's a real challenge for us. And I think mental health will perhaps be one of the unfortunate legacies of the pandemic, and us, we're probably still trying to get to grips with understanding the true impact of that for us. And of course, for the aviation sector, we've had lots of good news. We can barely handle it recently with the US opening again, with the change of the testing regime, and the removal of the red, amber and green list has helped us a lot. But it's still a period of great uncertainty for the whole industry, and how long it will take us to bounce back is a big unknown. So tough times, but certainly bright future for us ahead. So with that as a bit of context, I'm going to hand over to Abbie, who's going to talk you through how we've approached.
Perfect, thank you. Lovely. So I wanted to start with, this is our people journey, and Darryl and I, when we started working together, we wanted to really create an experience around people returning to work. So I run this department, and what we do is we look at the people journey as like a series of touch points. So right from kind of inspiring them to come to work to us, right to saying goodbye. And that journey is not linear at all. It can last up to 35 years. And that welcome back touch point was really an opportunity to create a thoughtful and brilliantly different experience for our people. And I think that's kind of what sets us apart. We really tried to weave that experience right through this process. It wasn't just a transactional come back to work. We really tried to think about the experience. And because this work was so big, it was so complex, what we tried to do is break it down into phases. So kind of like, we talked, didn't we, earlier about sort of Maslow hierarchy of needs, kind of getting those foundations right first. So our first phase was all around reassurance. So reassuring our teams, instilling confidence that they can come back to work, that is a safe, COVID-safe environment for them to come back to work to. So that first phase was all around that. And then once we embedded that, our second phase was then all around looking at our smarter ways of working. What do we want the future of work to be at Virgin Atlantic? So that was the second phase. And then once we embedded those two phases, the third stage was all around being at our best. How do we drive really high performance once we've embedded those two stages? So that was kind of how we worked it through to kind of make it much more achievable. And what I'll do, at the moment, we're kind of in between phase 2 and phase 3. We're not at phase 3 yet, so we're going to talk you through kind of phase 1 and phase 2. And phase 1 was this, so again, it was the reassurance piece. So what we did is we really created an environment that kind of highlighted the importance of the COVID-safe environment. So, and we did everything we could to encourage people to return to work. So we had alternative desks. We had COVID-safe measures like people being tested as they came in, thermal testing as well. We had an app which you had to book before you came into the office, so we controlled numbers. We encouraged people to wear masks. We actually said it was mandatory when social distancing wasn't available. So to really kind of create that kind of reassurance and instill that confidence at that stage. And then what we tried to do is educate people on how the business has changed. So we had hundreds of people out of the business for 18 months. So most of them were on furlough or extended periods of home working. And the business has changed. The size of the business changed significantly. So what we did, we created a program called Reconnect, which was a digital learning piece, which basically reconnected them with the business because the business had changed. So we talked to them about, how the business has changed. We talked to them about our behavioural shift to more agile ways of working. We talked to them about our laser focus now on cost and how our company has become much more commercial. So when they came back, they knew what business they were coming back to. It wasn't the old business. Hopefully it's got all of the amazing things that makes Virgin so special, but it has changed and we needed to tell that story. And then the third thing really at this stage was we needed to start encouraging people to come back to the office, giving them a reason to come back to the office, because people were reluctant, they were nervous to come back. So what we did is we opened our restaurants and our cafes, and we created safe kind of social distance collaboration spaces, because there's some things that you can just do, it's just better done face to face. So we kind of looked at work as an activity, and we said there's things that just must be done better face to face. Come into the office for those type of activities, and that's how we encourage people to return. Does that make sense? I'm getting nods, that's good. Perfect. So that was kind of phase one. What I would say there is we went really overboard in terms of comms. We created a microsite where people can understand how to use Teams, how to run a virtual meeting. We also gave a lot of support to our line managers in how to reconnect with their teams virtually and in the workplace. So that was kind of phase one. And then this for me is where it gets quite exciting, which is quite sad. Sorry, I'm a HR person. And this is kind of phase two. So this was, what did we want the future of work to look like? So we know like the pandemic has forced us to consider how we work and where we work much more than we'd ever done before. And certainly we were craving at Virgin Atlantic that face-to-face contact, like it's built on, that face-to-face kind of social interaction. But we also wanted to leverage all of those positive ways of working that we'd worked over the last 18 months, through Teams, that virtual working. And when we started this piece of work, we did a lot of research, and the companies that we researched kind of fell into two camps. So some companies just wanted to come back, like 100%. They were ready to come back. They were going to come back 100% office-based working. And then some companies did want to come back to that kind of hybrid way of working, which is what we've done. But even with this hybrid approach, there were still a lot of rules around it. So there were still like core hours, or there was still, we need you to come into the office 3 days a week. And this is where we believe our ways of working kind of differs from other kind of hybrid kind of ways of working, where it's basically built on a foundation of trust and empowerment. And we then hand over that trust and empowerment to our colleagues to make the right decisions, to make informed decisions about how, when and where they work based on the activities they have that day, basically. So, and they have to choose that based on their needs, but also the needs of the customer and the company. So that's how we kind of base these. What we didn't want to do is create like a massive, like detailed policy that no one reads. And in my experience, when I've written policies before, which I've done a lot, that you write them from like the lowest common denominator. So you write them with people like you thinking people are not going to do the work, or if we don't see them, they're going to be, going off and doing their own thing. We didn't want to do this with this. We wanted to create principles. So that's what we've done. We've created 6 principles, which then empower our teams to work within those 6 principles. So it's basically freedom within a framework. Does that make sense? Perfect. Good. So, and the other sort of points that is good to raise is we wanted to look at work now as like an activity and not a place. And also we wanted the focus, we wanted our managers to measure on output and performance, not location and presenteeism. So measure what matters, measure your colleagues, your team on what matters, which is their performance. How they do it and when they do it is basically down to them. So that's kind of the 6 principles, and I'll go through each one really quickly. So there was leadership, which is... Missing. But there was leadership, which was all around leadership based on trust and based on inclusivity and measuring output over presenteeism. Behaviours, which was all around taking this really agile way of working and this laser focus on cost. Working patterns, which is we give you flexibility by default. So it can't be done in every role, obviously, but we will give you flexibility by default, allowing colleagues to choose their working hours when their energy is at its highest and when they want to work, but not just based on their needs, but also the customer and the rest of the company. Workspaces, all of our workspaces now are built on not in functional areas. So HR don't sit all together and tech don't sit all together. We have built them based on the activity you do. So there's collaboration spaces, there's self-working spaces, there's innovation spaces now to really kind of drive that kind of innovation and cross-functional working. And then we've got technology. So we couldn't do this without technology. So really taking kind of a digital mindset to not only work, but also how we learn. So we've moved completely away from classroom-based learning over the 18 months, moved right to digital learning, which is much more inclusive, and collaborate as well. How we collaborate is much more, it can be virtually now, and how we communicate is also virtual now. And then what we've done is we've underpinned this by well-being. So one of the things that came up when we were creating these kind of 6 principles was people were saying, look, we've got to be careful because you're going to have this always-on culture and everybody thinking they're going to have to, respond to every email whenever they get them. So we underpinned it by well-being and making sure people have that kind of work-life balance and saying to leaders, when you apply these, make sure you have that kind of pre-contracting conversation with your team to say, like, personally, I like working in the evenings, but if I'm going to send you an email, at 9, 10 at night, you don't need to respond. That's when my energy is at its highest. You respond when you want to respond, although, in a timely manner, etc. So it was underpinned by well-being. So, and I will hand you over now back to Darryl to explain how we evaluated.
Cool, thanks, Abbie. Sorry I messed up the slide.
That's all right. We'll be talking about that.
Yeah, she won't let me forget that, will she? Okay. So, effectively, as Abbie said, we've kind of gone through phase 1 and phase 2, so that reassurance and then kind of introducing new ways of working. We've now just gone through a period of taking stock of where are we at, so we can use that now to really think about how do we build and where do we go next. So on the screen, we've got some of the results. What we've done is a survey of our sort of head office-based workforce. We've got around 300 responses, so it's a really good sample size. We've also been out talking to a number of our senior leaders and listening to how they're finding it, so we're getting their perspective. But we've also been out talking to a number of our committee groups. So we've got various forums that come together that have really helped us understand how things are working for them. The good news is that 80% of people that responded to our survey said that the new ways of working were more effective for them than the way we were working before that, which I hope is not a reflection of how bad it was before, but I hope a reflection of how good stuff is for them now. And even more encouraging, only 6% said that it was less effective than it was before for them. So overwhelming support that actually what we've done is the right thing and is certainly bearing fruit for our people. When we then probed that to try to understand a bit about the why are people responding so positively, a lot talked about the benefits of the greater flexibility and particularly the ability to manage their home work-life balance much more effectively, spending less time commuting, both the time but also the cost of that commute. We're based down in Crawley, which isn't always the easiest of places to get to for our head office, so that was a big benefit. And that's also helped us quite a lot with recruitment and talent attraction as well, which made a big difference. People were also saying to us that they enjoyed spending more time with their loved ones, and whether their loved ones enjoyed spending more time with them, we weren't able to survey and check. And they also felt, on the whole, there was quite a lot of well-being upsides here for them as well, by their ability to be able to do different things through the day, through the flexibility that we could afford them. In asking them kind of how they expected to work going forward, most anticipate being in the office between 1 and 2 days a week in the future, with some also kind of quoting some challenges, though, about things that we do need to keep working on if we're going to make this work and really embed it. And 3 themes kind of came out on things that we need to keep doing. One is, how do we encourage people to come into the office frequently? So whilst for some working from home all the time is okay, actually for their colleagues, they do want to see one another, and it does need everybody to participate, and that trust goes two-way. People need to be trusted to come in regularly, as well as being trusted when they're working from home. Mm-hmm. So how do we encourage that? And as Abbie said, we've done some things like opening up our restaurants and our cafes to create reasons for people to come in, but we need to do more of that. That's not to say we want to get to 5 days a week, because we absolutely don't. We want to keep it very flexible. We've had a lot of feedback around mixed meetings, so where you've got some people in the room and some people that are dialing in on Teams. Despite some mass investment in tech and some really whizzy stuff, I don't think we've quite got that right. And we've certainly got some opportunities there, both in terms of the technology, but also the etiquette, to know how we can really optimise that. And then thirdly, thinking about particularly new joiners and how we can help people learn and get up to speed and build relationships with one another in a virtual way when they're not coming into the workplace as frequently, to make sure we aren't missing opportunities to keep people informed, to generate new ideas. And as I think we've said probably 100 times today, the water cooler moments, how do you recreate those in a virtual way? That said, we are really delighted with where we are. And there's a huge willingness from everybody within the organisation, really, to keep on learning and adapting and trying to keep a focus on this and really try and make this work. So just to close with a quick summary of what we've talked about. So this has been a really tough period for a lot of businesses. We recognise that, including a lot of our suppliers and our customers. But I think for aviation and travel, this has been a particularly tough period of time. The impact for us and on our people has been really vast, and probably would never have thought we'd kind of get through this, I think. But with hindsight, it's amazing we've still got so many great people with us. Reassurance has been a really core part of that, and in terms of the approach, and as Abbie said, we've almost over-invested in that to really kind of keep all of our different work groups reassured. Then we've launched our new ways of working, around empowering and trusting our people and underpinning that with 6 principles. The feedback from that has been really positive, so 80% saying that we're more effective now in how we work, which is a fantastic endorsement, I think, for where we are. But we know there's some things that we need to tweak and really to optimise and make sure we continue to be effective. And of course, this does remain a journey, so we do need to keep learning, evolving and adapting. This isn't done, finished, put it in the drawer. Actually, we need to keep looking at this and reviewing and seeing how things continue to evolve and change. So with that, that's the end of what we were going to talk through. So I'd like to say a massive thank you for listening. Looks like everyone's still awake, which is good. Thank you all so much for your time. Good to meet you.
Thank you.